My mother was a palace maid that was buried alive together with her kids for a crime she didn't commit. I came for justice. I am Chisholm, 10 years old, though back then I was just a little girl watching my mother step into a world far bigger than anything I had ever known. Mother had always been strong, even when life tried to break her. She wasn't tall or wealthy, but she had a gentle authority, a kindness that made people trust her without question. When she got the job as a palace maid, I remember the excitement in her eyes, the way her fingers trembled as she held the letter of acceptance. "Chisholm," she said, smiling as she held me close, "this is a chance to work hard to help others and to give us a better life." I didn't understand fully, but I felt her excitement, her pride. Even Father seemed hopeful, though his eyes carried worry. "The palace is a world of its own," he warned her. "Be careful." Mother laughed softly. "Careful, yes, but brave too. That is the way of life, my love." The day she started, I remember following her to the palace gates. The guards were tall, their armor clinking with every step. The gates themselves were massive, carved with intricate symbols and painted in colors that seemed almost too bright to be real. Inside, the palace was alive. Children ran through the halls, maids hurried with trays of food, and the air smelled of fresh flowers, soap, and something sweet I couldn't name. Mother was assigned to the West Wing, where the Queen's chambers and the children's rooms were. She was to clean, organize, and attend to the needs of the royal family. It was hard work, but she didn't complain. She always said, "A job done with love is never heavy." She took me and my siblings along sometimes, just for a walk, so we could see the palace in all its splendor. Utch ran ahead, laughing, while Adiz toddled behind, holding Mother's hand. I followed slowly, taking it all in, the fountains that sparkled in the sun, the tall mirrors that reflected our tiny faces, the carpets so soft I wanted to sink into them forever. Mother learned quickly. She remembered every corridor, every hidden staircase, every way to move silently without disturbing the royals. The other maids watched her with a mix of awe and jealousy. Some whispered behind her back, but Mother ignored it. She had no time for petty rivalries. Her heart was too full of care for us and for doing her job well. I would watch her from the garden sometimes, sweeping the marble floors, talking gently to the children, arranging flowers, or quietly straightening the Queen's garments. She seemed to move with a kind of quiet power, and even I could feel it. The royal children loved her. They would run to her with scraped knees or tear-streaked faces, and she would scoop them into her arms and soothe them, humming songs I didn't know but wanted to learn. Even though she worked long hours, Mother made sure we were never alone. In the mornings, she would wake us, braid our hair, and tell us stories of heroes, brave mothers, and children who never gave up. "Chisholm," she said one morning, brushing my hair with gentle fingers, "always remember, being small doesn't mean being powerless. Even the smallest hands can do great things." Utch and I would play in the corridors when no one was looking, and Adiz would try to follow us, giggling. Sometimes, Mother would join us, letting us climb the low branches of the pawpaw tree in the palace garden or chase butterflies near the fountain. We were happy. I didn't know the word yet, but those days were precious. But the palace was not without danger. I noticed how some of the maids would whisper behind Mother's back, glances full of envy. And sometimes, the Queen herself would look at Mother with eyes that were polite, but cold, calculating. I didn't understand it then. I only felt it as a small knot of fear in my stomach. Mother tried to shield us from it. "Do not worry about what others say," she whispered at night. "Focus on what is good and true. Do your work, help those who need it, and be brave. Love is stronger than envy, my loves." It was a month after she started that trouble came. A piece of jewelry went missing, something small but valuable. The palace erupted in whispers. "Who could have done it?" they asked. "A maid, surely, always the ones we cannot see." Mother was calm when they questioned her. She told the truth, as always, but I saw the fear in her eyes. She knew that innocence didn't always protect you in the palace. That night, she held us close. "Whatever happens," she said softly, "stay together, be brave. Remember that love is stronger than fear." We didn't know yet how true those words would become. The palace was like a small world of its own. Every day had its rhythm, a mix of work, learning, and the little joys we could find. Mother woke before the sun, sweeping the floors of the queen's chambers, polishing the mirrors until they gleamed, arranging the flowers in vases just so. Sometimes I would follow her, carrying a small dust cloth like a tiny apprentice, pretending I was helping. Utch would tag along, trying to mimic her sweeping, but always knocking over something in the process. Adiz would toddle behind, giggling, her little hands clapping in delight at every shiny surface. Mother never scolded us harshly. "Careful, my loves," she would say. "Mistakes happen. We learn from them, but we always try again." The palace children were our playmates. At first, they ignored us, the children of a maid, but Mother's gentle nature and patience won their hearts. Sometimes, they would invite us to play games of tag in the gardens or hide-and-seek among the marble pillars. I loved running with Utch and the royal children, the wind whipping past my face, feeling free even in the walls of the palace. There were lessons, too, though not the kind I learned in a school back home. The queen's children had tutors, and sometimes Mother would stand nearby, learning alongside them, absorbing how the palace worked. She taught us little things about manners, about how to speak softly and respectfully, how to observe carefully without drawing attention. "Chisholm," she whispered one afternoon as we walked past the throne room, "the palace is full of rules, but not all rules are fair. You must learn them anyway. One day, knowing the rules will help you protect those you love." I didn't understand then what she meant, but I could feel the weight of her words. The palace had its festivals, days when the halls were decorated with bright cloths, fragrant flowers, and delicious foods. I loved these days. Utch and I would chase each other under the banners, and Adiz would squeal at the colors and sounds. Mother worked hard, ensuring every tray was perfectly arranged, every flower in its place, every child safe and happy. Even in the midst of work, she always found time to play with us. She would lift Adiz into her arms, run through the corridors with Utch in her hand, and let me sit on her shoulder, laughing as we pretended to be heroes from her stories. But even on the brightest days, there was always a shadow. Some of the maids would whisper when they thought Mother wasn't looking, their voices sharp with envy. Sometimes the queen herself would glance at her with an expression I couldn't read, sometimes curiosity, sometimes suspicion. Nights in the palace were quieter, but not always safe. Mother tucked us into the small quarters we shared, telling stories of bravery and love. She would brush our hair, kiss our foreheads, and whisper prayers that the palace itself seemed to respect. "Even in darkness we find light," she said. "Even in fear we find courage. Remember this, my loves." I lay awake sometimes, listening to the sounds of the palace at night, the distant footsteps of guards, the soft snores of the royal children, the wind whistling through the high windows. Utch would murmur questions about the day, Adiz would roll over in her sleep, and Mother would hold us tight, humming until I drifted into dreams. Mother's kindness did not go unnoticed. The palace children adored her. The cooks respected her. Some of the senior maids began to admire her skill. Even the guards, who were usually gruff and silent, treated her with a certain quiet deference. Yet jealousy always lingered in corners. I remember a maid muttering, "She's too clever, too perfect. Something like that can't last." Mother didn't respond to their words. She just smiled at us, her eyes full of love. "Do not worry about others' envy," she said. "We do what is right. That is all we can do." Each morning, Mother woke us before the sun. We would gather in our small quarters, brush our teeth with water from the courtyard basin, and wash our faces in the cool morning light. She taught us to tie our hair neatly, to keep our hands clean, and to speak softly when walking through the palace halls. Utch and I often pretended we were knights, charging through the corridors with broomsticks as swords. Adiz would toddle behind, waving a small doll in her hand. Mother would sometimes chase us playfully, laughing as she swept her skirts behind her, letting us escape before gently scooping us up. Even in work, there was room for imagination. I remember her kneeling to sweep beside me one morning. "Chisholm," she said, "every task has its magic. Even cleaning can make the world brighter if you do it with care. I believed her. The marble floors seemed to sparkle more when I imagined they were rivers, and the mirrors reflected not just our faces but our small adventures, frozen in time. Mother often taught us in between her chores. We learned about plants in the palace garden, how the lilies bloomed and smelled sweet, how the pawpaw tree's fruit grew, and which flowers could be used for medicine. She told stories about the stars at night, explaining how each one had a tale of bravery, love, or wisdom. Even the smallest star can shine brightly, she said. Never forget that, Chisholm. Utch loved these lessons the most. He would ask endless questions about the flowers, the birds, the palace kitchens, and the servants' lives. Adiz listened quietly, sometimes giggling when Mother made funny faces or whispered secret messages to her. I treasured these moments, feeling as if the palace, vast and intimidating as it could be, was ours, at least for now. Mother had a favorite spot in the palace gardens, a small clearing behind the lilies and a low wall of hedges. She called it our secret garden. Here, we could escape the rules and chores, play freely, and share our thoughts without anyone listening. We built tiny forts with fallen branches, pretended the pawpaw tree was a castle tower, and sometimes Mother would tell us riddles or puzzles, making us think and laugh at the same time. "Remember, my loves," she whispered one afternoon, brushing the sweat from Utch's forehead. "In a world full of rules, there is always a place where your imagination is free. Guard that place carefully. It is yours forever." Even when palace life felt overwhelming, this little corner gave us joy, comfort, and courage. Festivals were magical. The palace would shine with colorful banners, flowers, and lights. The smells of roasted meat, sweet pastries, and spiced drinks filled every corridor. The royal children dressed in bright clothes, and we, Mother's children, sometimes joined them for a short while, learning the songs and dances that celebrated the Queen's lineage. Mother worked tirelessly during these times, ensuring the decorations were perfect, the tables set precisely, and no child went hungry. Yet she always made time for us. We would run between the tables, weave through the dancers, and laugh at our own clumsy attempts to mimic the royal children. Even Utch, normally clumsy, could spin in a little dance that made Mother laugh so hard her sides ached. Adiz would clap and giggle, her tiny feet stamping the marble floor. Mother's lessons went beyond games and flowers. She taught us about kindness. She helped other maids when they struggled, quietly mended torn clothes, and shared her small meals when someone was hungry. "Chisholm," she said one evening, holding my small hand, "the palace may be full of grandeur, but true strength is shown in caring for others. Never forget that. Power is nothing without heart." I tried to remember her words. Every day I watched her, learning how to be gentle but firm, brave but careful, small but strong. Mother had settled into her routine seamlessly. Each morning, she would wake us before the sun, brush our hair, and whisper words of encouragement as we washed our faces in the cold courtyard water. Even Utch, who was usually restless, listened quietly when she reminded us to be careful and kind. Adiz would giggle and toddle after her, clutching her little doll, while I tried to mimic my mother's calm steps as she led us down the long corridors toward the kitchen. The palace was alive with sounds, clattering dishes, murmurs of maids, the soft laughter of the Queen's children, the occasional sharp bark of a guard's command. It all seemed vast and endless to me, but Mother moved through it like she belonged, her presence gentle yet commanding in a way I could feel even at 10. I wanted to be like her someday, strong but kind. During the day, she worked tirelessly. She polished the mirrors until they shone like rivers, arranged the flowers with meticulous care, and soothed the palace children when they scraped their knees or fought over toys. Sometimes, when she saw me starring, she would beckon me over and hand me a small brush. "Here, help me," she would say, and I would sweep beside her, feeling proud to contribute. Even in the smallest tasks, she made us feel important. Yet even amidst the joy, shadows lingered. Some of the other maids would whisper when they thought Mother wasn't looking. I overheard snatches of conversation, voices sharp with envy. "She's too clever, too perfect," one would mutter. "The Queen notices everything she does. Mark my words, trouble will follow." Mother never acknowledged them. She smiled at us instead, her eyes warm. "Do not worry about envy, my loves," she said one night as she tucked us into bed. "It does not touch the heart that is true. Do your work, care for each other, and always be brave. Love is stronger than anything else." We played in the palace gardens whenever we could. Utch and I chased each other around the fountains, our laughter ringing across the marble floors. Adiz toddled behind us, squealing at the birds and the flowers. Mother sometimes joined in, letting us climb the low branches of the pawpaw tree, telling stories of heroes and magical lands where courage and love always won. Those moments felt like magic. Even the sun seemed warmer when we played there. The palace celebrated many festivals, and those days were especially wondrous. The halls sparkled with banners and garlands, the air thick with the smell of roasted meats and sweet pastries. Mother worked tirelessly, arranging every tray, polishing every vase, and ensuring no child went hungry or cried unnoticed. Yet she never left us alone. She would lift Adiz into her arms, twirl her around, or chase Utch and me through the corridors, laughing until our sides ached. Even the royal children couldn't resist joining in our games at times, making us feel almost equal to them in joy, if only for a moment. But the palace was never entirely safe. The queen's eyes were sharp, and her judgment often felt like it hovered just above our heads. Some maids were jealous of Mother's skill, her quiet confidence, and the affection she received from the children. I noticed the sideways glances, the tight-lipped smiles, the whispered conversations that ended abruptly whenever Mother passed. Even the palace guards sometimes seemed uneasy in her presence, their attention lingering just a little too long. One afternoon, as I helped Mother arrange flowers near the west wing, a maid muttered just loud enough for me to hear, "Watch her. One day she will slip, everyone does." I felt a shiver creep up my spine, but Mother didn't. She only smiled, brushing a stray hair from my face. "Fear is only dangerous if you let it control you," she whispered. "We control fear, not the other way around." Even with whispers and shadows around us, our days were filled with small triumphs. Mother's gentle nature earned her respect, and even a few grudging smiles from those who had once looked down on her. She taught us to look for the good in people, to help wherever we could, and to hold on to love even when the world seemed harsh. I wanted to be brave like her, to carry her courage in my own small hands. Sometimes the palace seemed too big, too loud, too imposing, but Mother always found ways to make it feel like home. She would take us to our secret spot behind the lilies and the pawpaw tree, where we could play freely without anyone watching. Here, we built tiny forts with fallen branches, imagined castles and dragons, and let our laughter echo in the quiet corners of the garden. "This is our world too," Mother said. "Never forget it, no matter what." Even in the simplest moments, there was a sense that we were part of something bigger. Mother's presence made the palace feel safe, yet I could feel hints of danger, the unspoken rules, the silent jealousies that threaded through the halls like hidden roots. I didn't understand everything, but I trusted Mother's wisdom. She always reminded us, "Be brave, my loves. Love is stronger than fear, and courage lives in the smallest hearts as well as the largest." And so we lived, day by day, playing, learning, and loving, unaware of the storm that would soon descend upon us, changing our lives forever. Life in the palace continued, but something had changed. I noticed it first in the whispers, soft, quick voices behind closed doors, hurried glances whenever Mother passed. The other maids no longer smiled at her the way they used to. Instead, there was a tension in the air, like the quiet before a storm. It started with small things. A jewel went missing from the queen's dressing room, a simple brooch but precious nonetheless. The palace erupted in murmurs. "Who could have taken it?" they asked, eyes darting from one maid to another. "Surely someone has been careless." Mother was calm when the queen's attendants questioned her. She answered politely, honestly, as always. "I did not touch the jewels," she said. "I have done my duties faithfully, and I have nothing to hide." But even then, I saw the worry in her eyes. She tried to mask it, smiling at us as we tiptoed behind her in the corridors, but I could feel the tension in her shoulders, the tightness in her hands when she held ours. The whispers grew louder. Some of the older maids began to murmur about her cleverness, her favor with the children, her skill at her work. "She moves too quietly," one said to another. "The queen notices everything. Someone like that, she can't be trusted. At night, I would lie in bed, listening to Mother packing quietly outside our small quarters. Sometimes she would hum softly, as if to calm herself, or whisper prayers I could barely understand. I wanted to ask her what was happening, but fear made my throat tight. Even at 10, I knew something was wrong. One day, I followed her secretly to the West Wing, where she was arranging the Queen's personal rooms. I hid behind a vase and watched as the Queen entered suddenly, her eyes sharp, scanning every corner, lingering on Mother. Mother's hands trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "Your Majesty, I have prepared everything as you asked," she said, bowing. The Queen's gaze was cold. "The jewels have been taken," she said. "Someone must be held responsible, and I trust you understand the weight of such responsibility, Maid." Mother nodded. Her lips pressed together, but her eyes, those gentle, strong eyes, did not falter. "I understand, Your Majesty," she said quietly, "but I assure you I am innocent." After the Queen left, Mother sighed and rested her hands on the table, closing her eyes. I wanted to run to her, to hug her and tell her everything would be okay, but she noticed me hiding and motioned for me to come closer. "Chisholm," she whispered, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Sometimes even the kindest hearts are blamed. The world can be cruel, but we hold on to what is true. Remember that." I nodded, though my stomach twisted with fear. I could see it in her eyes. She was worried not just for herself, but for us. The days that followed were tense. Mother worked harder than ever, checking every lock, polishing every corner, ensuring the children were safe and happy, while the other maids whispered behind her back, and even the guards sometimes cast suspicious glances. Then small accidents began to happen. A dropped tray here, a missing ribbon there, things that in the past would have been laughed off. But now, each little mistake was noticed, exaggerated, and quietly reported. I would watch Mother's face tighten with worry, and she would bend down to whisper to us, "We are brave. Remember, my loves, love is stronger than fear." Even in the gardens, where we played to escape the palace's eyes, I felt the tension. The butterflies seemed less bright, the pawpaw tree less welcoming. Yet Mother insisted on teaching us, laughing with us, and holding us close, as if her love alone could shield us from what was coming. I didn't know then that these whispers, these small accidents, would one day grow into the storm that swallowed us. All I knew was that fear was spreading like a shadow over our world, and that Mother was doing everything she could to keep it from touching us. The whispers became louder, more pointed. I would hear the maids speaking in low tones, glancing at Mother whenever the Queen's guards passed. "She's too clever," one would say. "It's only a matter of time before she slips." Even the palace children seemed to notice the tension. One afternoon, while we played near the fountains, one of the Queen's sons frowned at Mother. "Why does she always seem to know what to do?" he asked, tilting his head. "It's strange, I don't like it." Mother only smiled, ruffling my hair. "Children sometimes see things differently," she whispered. "Don't worry about their opinions, my loves. Focus on what is right." But I could see her shoulders tighten, the way her hands shook just slightly when she held us close. She knew something was brewing, even if we didn't fully understand it yet. It began with small inspections. The Queen would walk into the West Wing, glance around, ask questions about the jewels, and then leave without a word. Mother would answer politely, with calm precision, but I could see the worry in her eyes. Every corner of the palace seemed to hold a hidden danger now, and every passing glance felt like an accusation. Then the accidents turned into blame. One day, a golden brooch went missing. Mother had just polished it the morning before. When the Queen noticed it was gone, her voice was sharp as thunder. "Where is it?" she demanded. "Who is responsible for this?" Mother knelt, her hands pressed together, her voice steady but quiet. "Your Majesty, I do not know how it went missing. I have done my work faithfully and have taken care of everything in my charge." The Queen's eyes narrowed, icy and unforgiving. "Faithful work is meaningless if the jewels are gone. Someone must pay. Do you understand?" "Yes, Your Majesty," Mother whispered, bowing her head. Even then, she tried to shield us. She took Utch and Adi's hands in hers whenever we passed the queen's chambers, whispering, "Stay close. Don't speak unless I tell you. Be brave, my loves." I tried to be brave. I held my little siblings tight, hiding my fear behind a small mask of courage. But at night, when the palace grew quiet, I would lie awake listening to Mother's soft footsteps, hearing her whisper prayers I couldn't fully understand. "Chisholm," she said one night as she tucked me in, "sometimes the world will accuse the innocent. It is cruel, but we must hold on to truth, hold on to love. That is our strength." Even as the palace closed in around us, even as jealous maids and watchful eyes seemed to multiply at every corner, Mother never faltered. She worked tirelessly, cared for us, and taught us that courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to act in spite of it. Still, the shadow grew. Guards lingered longer in the halls. Maids whispered more openly now, glances sharp with suspicion. And the queen's visits became more frequent, her eyes cold and searching, as if she could see guilt written on Mother's very soul. I began to feel it too, the weight of the palace pressing down, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Even in the garden where we had once felt free, I could sense tension. Mother noticed it too. She would hold us close, whispering, "Love is stronger than fear. We are brave, my loves, always brave." But even as she spoke, I knew that the shadows were gathering, that the whispers and the small accidents were only the beginning. Something terrible was coming, and no matter how strong Mother was, no matter how brave we tried to be, the palace had already begun to turn against her. And I, small and 10 years old, could do nothing but cling to her hand. Hopping love would be enough to protect us. It happened on a morning that began like any other. The sun spilled gold across the palace tiles, the birds sang, and Mother was humming softly as she arranged the queen's chambers. We followed quietly behind her, Utch clinging to her hand, Adiz toddling beside us. But the air felt different. I noticed it immediately. The guards' eyes were sharper, their footsteps heavier, their faces set in ways I had never seen before. Mother's hands tightened around ours, and her hum stopped mid-note. The queen entered suddenly, flanked by her attendants. Her eyes burned with anger, sharp as daggers. "Enough," she said, her voice slicing through the usual palace murmurs. "The time for whispers and half-truths is over. The jewels are gone. Someone must answer for this." Mother stepped forward, kneeling as always, her hands folded before her. "Your Majesty, I swear, I have done no wrong. I am innocent." The queen's lips curled into a thin, cruel smile. "Innocent? You have been clever, haven't you? Quietly clever, earning favor, winning the children's hearts, polishing the floors perfectly. And yet the palace jewels disappear under your watch. That is no accident. That is a crime." Utch clutched Mother's skirt, his small face pale. Adiz whimpered, hiding behind my leg. I wanted to scream, to shout that we knew Mother was innocent, that she had never harmed anyone. But the queen's anger was like a wall. No voice could penetrate it. I swear, Your Majesty," Mother said, her voice trembling only slightly. "I have touched nothing that is not mine to care for. Please, do not punish me for what I did not do." "Silence," the queen snapped. "Your words are worthless. The law of the palace is clear. You will pay for this, and so will your children. No one leaves until justice is served." My stomach turned. I didn't understand everything, but I understood fear. I understood that the place that had once been our home, our sanctuary, was now a prison. The walls that had echoed our laughter now seemed to loom over us, dark and cold. Mother took our hands and pressed them to her chest. "Stay close," she whispered. "Whatever happens, we are together. Be brave, my loves, always brave." The attendants stepped forward. I saw the shadow of the queen's rage in their eyes as they reached for us. Utch cried out, and Adiz clung to my leg, trembling. I held them both, trying to be strong, trying to hold on to Mother's courage like it was a lifeline. We were led away, past the corridors we had once run freely through, past the fountains where we had played, past the gardens that had been our secret place of laughter. Everything felt heavy, silent, and unwelcoming. The palace, which had been full of warmth and light, had become a place of fear and judgment. Mother's hands never left ours. She whispered prayers, reassured us, and held us tightly, even as the attendant's grip on her arms grew firmer. "Love is stronger than fear," she whispered. "We are brave. We are together. Remember that, my loves." Even then, even as we were dragged toward an uncertain fate, I clung to her words. I did not understand how we could survive what was coming, but I knew one thing. Mother's courage, her love, was the only shield we had. And in my small heart, I vowed silently that one day I would make sure the truth was known. Even if the world was cruel, even if the palace believed lies, I would not forget. We were taken to a small, dim chamber at the edge of the palace grounds. The air was thick, smelling of damp earth and candle smoke. The attendants did not speak as they pushed us inside, leaving Mother to hold us close. Utch's small hands trembled, and Adi's whimpered softly, pressing her face into my arm. Mother's eyes met mine. Even in the dim light, I could see the strength in them, though her lips trembled slightly. "SHH," she whispered. "Do not be afraid. Whatever happens, we are together. Courage is not the absence of fear, my loves. It is acting even when your heart is frightened. Hold my hands, hold each other." We clung to her. I tried to be brave for her, but my stomach ached, and my throat burned with the need to cry. The palace, which had once been full of sunlight and laughter, now seemed like a cage, the walls closing in with every passing second. The Queen's voice came from the corridor, sharp and cold. "They will pay," she said. "Let the law of the palace be carried out." Mother squeezed our hands tighter. "Even if the world is cruel, remember that love cannot be taken from you. Remember that I am with you always." I wanted to scream, to tell the Queen that we were innocent, that Mother had done nothing wrong. But no one listened to the cries of children, and even the guards did not care. Their faces were hard, unfeeling, as they prepared the tools and ropes that would seal our fate. I watched Mother quietly, trying to memorize every detail of her face, the curve of her lips, the warmth in her eyes, the soft strength in her hands. "Do not forget who you are," she whispered. "No one can take that from you. Be brave, always brave." Utch whimpered, and I held him closer. Adiz pressed her tiny hands against Mother's chest, shivering. I felt a wave of helplessness, a storm of fear that seemed too big for our small bodies to carry. The attendants moved around us, their hands rough, their movements practiced. They did not speak, but I could see the cold efficiency in every gesture. The palace had turned against us, and there was no escape. Mother lowered her voice to a calm, steady whisper, almost as if she were speaking to herself. "If they try to bury us, remember this, my loves, even in darkness, light exists. Even when the earth covers us, our spirits cannot be broken. Be brave. Hold on to each other. Remember love. Remember me." I repeated the words silently in my head, over and over, trying to anchor myself in her strength. I felt her hands, warm and steady, holding ours. I felt the pulse of her love. And in that small, fleeting moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, we could survive even what was coming. The air grew colder, heavier. The sounds of the palace faded into silence. The garden, the fountains, the laughter, they were gone, replaced by the shadow of fear. I clutched my siblings' and Mother's hands tighter, whispering to myself, "Love is stronger than fear. We are brave. We are together." And as the attendants closed in, as the shadows stretched toward us, I held on to that promise with all my tiny heart, not knowing that soon the earth would rise above us, but also not knowing that even in the darkness, my story would not end. The air was already thick with dust and fear when the attendants dragged us toward the shallow pit behind the palace walls. Mother held us tightly, whispering words of courage, her own voice trembling just enough to betray the depth of her worry. Utch clung to her arm, Adiz pressed against my chest, and I held them both, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. "Stay close," Mother said, her eyes scanning the faces of the attendants. "No matter what they do, we are together. Love is stronger than fear." I wanted to scream at the world, to shout that we were innocent, that we had done nothing wrong. But no one listened. The palace had already decided our fate. The ground beneath the pit was cold and damp, the walls rising around us like the arms of the earth itself. The attendants shoved us in. Mother fell beside us immediately, wrapping her arms around us. I buried my face in her skirts, feeling the last warmth of the world above us slip away. Utch whimpered, "Mother, I'm scared," and Adi's tiny cries filled the small space. Mother whispered over and over, steady and calm, "It's all right, my loves. Be brave, hold on to each other. Remember love, remember me." Then the first handfuls of earth fell. The sound was deafening in the small space, the smell of soil thick and suffocating. I screamed, but it didn't matter. The earth swallowed my voice. We held each other tightly as layer after layer covered us, pressing against our small bodies, filling our lungs with dust, filling our hearts with terror. I felt Mother's hand on my cheek, warm and firm. "We are together," she said, her voice a tether to reality. "Even here, even in darkness, we are not broken. Hold my hand, Chisholm, never let go." The sun vanished. The garden, the fountains, the laughter, all of it gone, replaced by the weight of soil, the suffocating silence, the cold darkness. I pressed myself against my siblings and mother, listening to their frightened breathing, whispering silent prayers I didn't know the words to. Above us, the palace went on as if nothing had happened. The queen walked through the halls, attended by her children and servants, smiling and laughing, celebrating small festivals, polishing jewels, arranging flowers. The guards carried out their duties, the maids whispered behind one another's backs, and the palace life continued, bright and untouched, while beneath the earth our world had ended. It was a cruel contrast, life moving on without us, the palace forgetting its victims while the soil pressed heavier with every passing hour. And so we waited, buried alive beneath the earth, the palace moving on without a thought for the lives it had crushed, for the laughter it had silenced. And though fear threatened to overwhelm us, I clung to the promise that even in the deepest darkness, we would survive in some way, even if the world above had forgotten us entirely. I don't remember when I woke. One moment I was pressed under the earth, clutching Mother, Utch, and Adiz, our breaths shallow and ragged, and the next I was floating. I could see the soil above me, the roots, the darkness, and then suddenly the world shifted. I was not in the palace anymore, not in the earth, not in the rooms where we had lived. I was somewhere else, somewhere empty, quiet, but not peaceful. I could feel myself. I could feel my small body, my fear, my love for my family. And I could feel them too, though they were silent now. Mother's voice whispered in my mind, faint but steady. "We are together, Chisholm. Remember who you are. Hold on to love." The palace above moved on. I could see it sometimes in glimpses, the laughter, the celebrations, the guards walking the halls. And I hated it. Every joyous moment, every light and laughter felt like a lie, a mockery of what had been taken from us. I had been 10 when they buried us alive, and now I was something else, something that would not be ignored. I drifted through the corridors at first, unseen, unheard. The maids whispered, the queen smiled, the guards went about their routines, and I followed them, silent and invisible. I listened. I watched. And the rage built slowly in my chest, warm and bitter. They had taken Mother. They had taken us, and they had moved on. It started small. A cold wind when the guards passed, a shadow flickering at the edge of a maid's vision. I whispered through the cracks of doors, carried on the draft that traveled through the palace halls. The animals shied away when I passed. Small things at first, easy to dismiss. But I was patient. I had all the time in the world. I remembered Mother's words. Even in darkness, light exists. Even when the earth covers us, our spirits cannot be broken. Be brave. I clung to them. I was small, yes, but courage does not need size. Rage does not need form. And justice does not wait. The queen was the first to notice. She was walking through the halls one evening, her steps sharp, her smile painted carefully on her face. I appeared at the edge of her vision, a small, fleeting shadow, and she froze. Her lips parted in shock, and the laughter in her throat caught. She blinked, and I was gone, just a whisper in the air. The palace started to feel different to me. Rooms that had once seemed bright now smelled of fear and guilt, even if they didn't know it. The maids moved hurriedly, glancing over their shoulders, their hands trembling when they passed certain doors. I let them feel it, just enough to stir doubt, enough to remind them that the dead remember. I hovered near the gardens where the pawpaw tree had stood, where the lilies had been planted. The memory of our laughter, of our tiny joys, made the air thick with sorrow. I pressed myself against it, feeling my mother's love echo through me, and I whispered her name, promising, "I will not forget. I will make them pay. I will bring justice." Every night I grew stronger, sharper, more certain. I could move through the palace walls, glide unseen through corridors, touch objects without being seen. I could make the smallest things happen. A brush falls, a candle wavers, a mirror fogs over with a handprint that isn't there. And each time I felt a step closer to the justice that had been denied to us. I am Chisholm, 10 years old when they buried us alive. A child in life, but in death, I am the voice of the wronged, the shadow of those who cannot speak. I came for justice. And the palace, with all its splendor, would learn that no crime goes unpunished when the dead remember. At first, the palace dismissed it as coincidence. A flickering candle, a door that creaked open by itself, a chill that ran through the halls even in the heat of the day. The maids whispered nervously, but the queen laughed it off, blaming drafts and shadows. They did not know it was me, Chisholm, 10 years old, no longer bound by flesh, moving unseen, patient, and hungry for justice. I started with small things. A tray slipped from a maid's hands. She gasped and looked around, wide-eyed, blaming nothing but her own clumsiness. I laughed silently, a soft sound that carried only to those who had wronged us. Another time, a vase toppled from the queen's chambers, crashing to the marble floor. The queen frowned, suspicious, but said nothing aloud. She did not yet know I was here. Then came the whispers. At first, they were only in the minds of those who had taken joy in our suffering. The maids began to hear my voice at night, soft and cold. Remember what you did," I whispered. Sleep fled from them. They saw shadows at the edge of their vision, caught glimpses of a small figure watching them from corners they thought were empty. The queen felt it too. One evening she walked past the West Wing, smiling at nothing, and stopped suddenly. Her eyes darted, her breath quickened. A soft giggle, like a child, echoed through the hall. She spun around, but the corridor was empty. That night she could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw me, tiny, pale, and starring, my eyes full of the fire of vengeance. I hovered near the pawpaw tree and the garden where the lilies had once bloomed. It had been our sanctuary in life, and in death it became the throne of my resolve. I could see the palace above, moving on as if we had never existed. But now every sound, every shadow, every breath carried my presence. The palace would remember. They would feel the fear we had endured, even if only as a whisper in their minds. The maids began to panic. They spoke of the girl who haunted the palace, though none had seen her fully. Candles blew out, cold drafts swept through rooms, mirrors fogged with handprints that weren't there. I was everywhere and nowhere, a reminder that the innocent had been wronged and the guilty could not escape. The queen's nights grew restless. Her confidence cracked, her laughter hollow. She glanced over her shoulder constantly, imagining shadows where none existed. I was patient. Fear would grow slowly until it consumed her as she had consumed my mother's life. I did not strike immediately. I did not need to. Fear is a slow poison, and I had time. I whispered reminders of our laughter, our play in the gardens, our small joys that had been stolen. Each memory was a dagger to the palace's heart, a truth they could not see but could feel. I am Chisholm, 10 years old when they buried us alive, a ghost now, relentless and patient. I came for justice. Every step I take, every whisper I leave in the palace corridors brings me closer. And when the time comes, they will remember the children they tried to bury and the mother who was innocent. They will remember me. The palace trembled under my presence, but this time I was not content with whispers and shadows. The queen, the maids, and the attendants who had carried out our cruel burial could feel it too, and now they would pay in ways they could not hide from. It began subtly. A guard who had helped drag us to the pit awoke one night to find the floor beneath him cracked and shifting, roots winding around his legs, holding him fast. He screamed, but no one could come. His own fear had paralyzed him. The pain was nothing physical at first, but the terror burned deeper than any blade. The maids who had whispered, gossiped, and lied about Mother found themselves locked in their own chambers, doors refusing to open, mirrors showing them the image of the children they had condemned. They shrieked as the walls echoed the sound of our laughter, the laughter of the innocent, now turned to a chorus of accusation. The queen herself was not spared. One night, she awoke to find her grand bedchamber filled with the scent of damp earth and lilies, the garden of our play, now a reminder of what she had taken. Shadows moved across the walls, small figures appearing and disappearing, staring at her with eyes full of rage. Candles extinguished themselves, and the chill of the earth seeped into her bones. "You took everything from us," I whispered, my voice stronger than ever, carried through the palace halls. "You buried the innocent, you destroyed love. Now you will feel what it means to be buried in fear." And she did. The queen's body shook uncontrollably, her mind unraveling under the weight of guilt and terror. She could not eat, could not sleep, could not speak without hearing the soft, insistent whispers of the children she had wronged. Her advisors fled her side, leaving her isolated, consumed by the fear of ghosts she could not see but could not escape. The palace itself seemed to rebel. Floors creaked and splintered, candles flared and went out, mirrors cracked with the weight of our presence. Each person who had played a role in our burial felt a shadow pressing upon them, a cold hand they could not shake, a warning that the innocent cannot be destroyed without consequence. By the seventh night, the queen's pride had crumbled completely. She fell to her knees in the grand hall, surrounded by maids and guards who were trembling and weeping. "Forgive me! Please forgive me!" she begged. I appeared before her then, small and pale, my eyes blazing. "There is no forgiveness for what you did," I said softly but firmly. "Justice is not mercy. You will carry the weight of your crime for as long as you live. You will remember us every day until your last breath, until the palace itself remembers." And it was done, not through swords, not through fire, but through a fear deeper than any pain. The palace became a place of silence and trembling obedience, the guilty unable to act freely, haunted by the children they had buried. Their nights were sleepless, their days haunted by shadows of the laughter they had stolen. I lingered, hovering near the garden where the pawpaw tree and the lilies had once been. Mother Utch, at ease, we were free, finally, and those who had wronged us would carry the memory of their crime forever. Justice had been served, not through death or revenge, but through the punishment of conscience and the unshakable fear of the wronged. The palace would never again know peace. The palace never recovered. Not physically, its walls remained polished, its floors gleaming, but the life within it had changed forever. The queen, once proud and untouchable, moved like a shadow of herself. Her smiles were brittle, forced, and her voice trembled with fear even in public gatherings. Every mirror she passed reflected not her face, but glimpses of the children she had buried. Their pale, accusing eyes haunted her dreams, their whispers echoing in the halls and in her mind. She could not sleep. Every night she felt small hands clutching at her, felt the cold press of tiny bodies hovering near her bed. Candles would flare and fall on their own. Windows rattled. Doors opened and closed when no one was there. She trembled at every footstep, convinced that the shadows themselves were following her. Madness crept in slowly, consuming her pride. She wept alone in her chambers, calling out for forgiveness that would never come. The maids and attendants who had helped execute the burial suffered too. Those who had whispered against Mother now trembled at every corner, flinched at every sound, and feared even their own shadows. A simple breeze through the halls made them gasp, convinced a small, ghostly hand had touched them. Their sleep was broken, their laughter vanished, replaced with haunted eyes and trembling hands. The guilt they had buried alongside us refused to stay buried. It clawed at them day and night. Even the guards, proud and disciplined, could not escape. They reported hearing soft giggles near the armory, whispers in empty corridors, fleeting glimpses of small, pale figures watching them. Some were so consumed by fear that they refused to enter certain wings alone. They became cautious, paranoid, and sleepless, their courage eroded by something invisible yet undeniable. The palace itself seemed to groan with our presence. Candles extinguished inexplicably. Mirrors cracked along impossible lines. The walls occasionally seemed to sweat damp patches where no water existed. Flowers in the gardens wilted despite care, except near the pawpaw tree and the lilies, which bloomed unnaturally bright as though nourished by something unseen. No one could explain it. Scholars, priests, and mystics were called, but none could see or banish what had been done. The queen's authority faltered, her advisors whispered behind her back, and the palace that had once seemed invincible now trembled beneath invisible eyes. Fear had settled permanently into every stone. And through it all, I lingered. I hovered near the gardens, near the halls where my mother had once cleaned, near the rooms where our laughter had echoed. I whispered reminders of innocence stolen, of love buried, of justice delivered. Every scream in the night, every panic-stricken glance, every trembling breath was a mark of what they had done, and what they would never escape. The palace moved on outwardly, yes. Visitors arrived, festivals were held, jewels were polished, and meals were served. But inside, the palace never smiled again. Its halls were haunted, its people broken, and the echoes of our voices, mine, Utch's, Adi's, and Mother's, lingered in every shadow. The queen, maids, and guards were alive, but they suffered eternally. Every night, they felt the weight of the lives they had taken. Every day, they saw our memory in their reflections, in every shadow, in every corner of the palace. Justice had been done, not through sword or blood, but through fear, remorse, and the relentless presence of the wronged. They could no longer escape it, no longer pretend. They had buried the innocent, but the innocent had returned, and they would never be free. I am Chisholm, 10 years old when they buried us alive. In death, I am the voice that cannot be silenced, the memory that cannot be erased, and the justice that will never be denied. The palace never smiled again. Not really. From the day I walked its halls, unseen but felt, the air itself seemed to turn against those who had taken our lives. The floors were polished, the banners bright, and the halls busy with servants and guards, but beneath it all, the heartbeat of the palace had changed. The queen could no longer move through her chambers without fear. Every mirror reflected my eyes, pale and accusing, even when she turned quickly. Candles flickered and went out on their own. Doors slammed shut or refused to open, trapping her inside rooms she had once walked with arrogance. She trembled at every sound, a soft footstep, a whisper, even the wind through the windows, and imagined my small hand brushing against her shoulder. Nights became torturous. Sleep fled her entirely. Dreams were filled with Mother's face, Utch's laughter, Adi's tiny cries, and me, floating just above, starring, waiting. The maids fared no better. Those who had whispered against Mother now flinched at shadows. Every corner seemed alive. Every draught carried a giggle. Every candle flame wavered as if disturbed by a child's hand. They whispered among themselves, but even their voices trembled. Panic hid behind polite smiles. Some refused to walk the halls alone, clutching each other in terror, haunted by glimpses of what they had wronged. The attendants who had carried out our burial began to crumble under invisible pressure. One by one, they stumbled through the palace like ghosts themselves, nervous, twitching, haunted by unseen hands tugging at their clothes, shadows brushing their faces, whispers curling through their ears like smoke. The guards could not escape it either. Strong and proud men, disciplined in training, they would march through corridors only to falter, hearing laughter that echoed too close, seeing shadows where no one stood, feeling a chill pressing into their bones. Fear became a constant companion, gnawing at their courage, turning each step into an ordeal. Even the palace itself seemed to rebel. Floors creaked unnaturally, walls groaned, chandeliers swayed though there was no breeze. Mirrors cracked without reason. The gardens, where my siblings and I had once played, grew twisted. Flowers near the pawpaw tree and the lilies glowed unnaturally, bending toward me as I hovered above them. Other plants wilted, as though punished by the memory of what had occurred beneath the earth. Visitors came and went, oblivious to the history, but the palace held its fear in the bones of those who lived there. Laughter was brittle. Joy was hesitant. Every corner held a memory, every shadow a warning. The queen, the maids, the attendants, the guards, they were alive, yes, but every heartbeat carried terror. Every breath reminded them that the dead remembered. And I watched. From the shadows, from the cracks indoors, from the flicker of candlelight, I lingered, whispering reminders. We were innocent. You buried us alive. You cannot escape. The palace shivered beneath my presence, trembling as those who had committed the wrongs felt the weight of their crime pressing on them, invisible but relentless. The palace itself suffered. as if its very soul had been wounded. Walls echoed with the sounds of laughter that was no longer heard above, floors groaned with the memory of what had been done, and every night the air grew thick with fear, guilt, and the quiet, unrelenting vengeance of the wronged. I am Chisholm, 10 years old when they buried us alive. In death, I am the shadow in the halls, the whisper in the corridors, the memory that will not fade. And the palace, once proud, untouchable, alive, suffers still, because the innocent never forget and the guilty cannot escape. I sat beside the small grave, my tiny hands resting on the cold earth, the moonlight spilling across the garden and brushing the wilted lilies with silver. The air was still, heavy with the weight of all we had lost. Above, the palace loomed silently, its grandeur now hollow, its halls haunted by the fear I had left behind. I could feel it, the trembling of hearts that had once been unshakable, the quiet terror that now lingered in every corridor, every room, every shadow. Behind me, faint and shimmering, the shadow of Mother appeared, holding Utch and Adiz in her arms. She wailed softly, the sound echoing like wind through the trees, but slowly her sorrow softened into a sigh, as if the promise of justice had finally reached her. I reached toward her shadow, and though I could not touch her, I felt the warmth of our bond, love that no cruelty could destroy, that no darkness could bury. I whispered their names softly, over and over. Mother, Utch, Adiz. Each word carried the memory of our laughter, our small joys, the stolen moments of life we should have had. I pressed my hands to the earth as if to tell the world that we were still here, that the innocent could not truly be erased. The palace above shimmered in the distance, faintly alive but forever changed. I could see the queen packing in her chambers, her face pale, haunted by the children she had buried and the mother she had wronged. The maids whispered to each other in fear, glancing at shadows that were no longer just tricks of the light. Every corner of that grand house carried the memory of us now, and no one could walk its halls without knowing what had been done. I looked at the grave one last time. The cross stood simple and quiet, the lilies glowing faintly as if lit from within. Here, beneath the sky and the moon, we were together again. The pain would always linger, but so did our love, our courage, and the justice I had delivered. Slowly I rose, feeling the earth release its hold. I hovered for a moment, looking toward the palace one last time, feeling the peace that comes with knowing the wronged have been remembered and the guilty have felt the weight of their deeds. Then, like a soft whisper carried away by the wind, I faded into the night. The garden held our presence in quiet reverence. The pawpaw tree, the lilies, the shadows, they remembered us. And in that silence I finally felt free.